Introduction to Super Buddhism, Part 1, Searching, 3. However, despite Shuddhadana's wishes, the prince was born with siddha abilities, spiritual direct sensing. In a famous episode, the 12-year-old Siddhartha, while sitting with royalty and ministers at a harvest festival where the Shakya tribe gave thanks to the heavens for the year's bountiful harvest, transferred his own mind to a small bird that landed near the venue of the harvest festival, and experienced vicariously for himself the life of the bird. These episodes shows that Siddhartha was born with a highly open chakra. However, as is the case today, there were few people who could speak clearly about such spiritual matters then as they are now. Siddhartha himself did not know how to get accustomed to his spiritual experiences. And it was around this time that Siddhartha began to think about the impermanence of the world and gradually began to meditate, without anyone instructing him, to seek the truth. Shuddhadana then had a bad premonition, and he saw Siddhartha growing more sensitive day by day and endlessly questioning the contradictions and absurdities of the world to his teachers. Apparently, Siddhartha was clearly interested in the metaphysical contradictions of society and was more concerned about such aspects than ordinary mundane affairs. He was leaning towards the path of a monk rather than the path of a world-unifying chakra-vaulting king as an ideal ruler. King Shuddhadana became aware of his son's inclinations and built 3 more beautiful palaces for him, one for the dry season, one for the hot season, and one for the rainy season, where he gathered beautiful courtesans and dancers for a harem, so that his son would develop a taste for worldly pleasures rather than profitless philosophical pursuits. In the palaces, hedonistic ceremonies were held every day and night, and young Siddhartha was entertained in the midst of it all. However, he was not really interested in such things. Instead, he continued his philosophical speculations and asked difficult questions that made his tutors and ministers cringe. Why are we humans born? Why do we die? Why do we age? Why do we suffer from disease? Seeing his son questioning his teachers constantly, King Shuddhadana realized that it would be foolish for him not to have a spiritual guide, so he assigned a high-ranking Brahmin or Shramana in addition to a teacher of practical learning. Siddhartha then directed all questions to such spiritual guides, and his questioning tendency was quieted. When Siddhartha finally regained his composure, Shuddhadana came up with the idea of arranging for his son to take a wife in order to bring him back to the ordinary life of a prince. In India at that time, a 16-year-old was a mature and respectable young man, and King Shuddhadana took a beautiful daughter from his wider family known as Yashodhara, who had a particularly good ancestral line, to be his son's consort. Perhaps because of this, Siddhartha's life apparently became more settled during that time, and he was able to perform his official duties for the country while carrying on with his daily life as in the king-in-waiting. So he spent some time as a youth with a well-balanced mix of daily activities. Along with his practical studies, he meditated and studied the scriptures, receiving guidance from gurus. Needless to say, this was a period of basic learning for Shakyamuni Buddha on his path towards the enlightenment of God that he would later reach. Enlightenment is not reached overnight. It is something that cannot be realized without a long period of intensive study of the scriptures. In this period, Siddhartha hid the will that he would eventually be ordained deep in his heart. Siddhartha studied not only the practical sciences of imperialism, but also the Upanishads, the Manu Code, and a series of Vedic teachings such as the Rig Veda, Atharva Veda, Yajur Veda, and Sama Veda as spiritual studies to be acquired by the next emperor who would lead a tribe. In addition, he also studied classics from the Indian tradition such as the Mahabharata and Ramayana at the time. From reading these scriptures that contain the essence of excellence, he was able to use them as a source of inspiration for his own personal journey towards his later enlightenment. The excellence conveyed by such a unified philosophical system that governs the universe is so superior that it cannot be found outside India even today, let alone in Siddhartha's time. Many things can be understood from the teachings he later preached. Let us examine some of them. In general, there are a number of yogas that have spread in the modern world. Hatha Yoga, Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Kundalini Yoga, and others are well known. Among these, Hatha Yoga, which involves the use of the body in a series of poses, is currently taught in many yoga schools. Hatha Yoga, originally from India, went to New York in the United States, where it took on fashionable names such as Hot Yoga and Integral Yoga, and was practiced wearing leotards and tank tops. The yoga practiced by the young Siddhartha was not like this, but rather a method of samatha vipassana centered on the ancient Indian cosmology of the Vedas and meditation. We now understand the teachings of Siddhartha after he reached enlightenment and became a Buddha as of two stages, the lesser vehicle and the greater vehicle, Mahayana. A lesser vehicle Buddhist is one who pursues only one's own enlightenment and is a person who boards a small boat. Greater vehicle Buddhists are those who board a large boat, listen to the Buddha, and spread the truth they have realized as to many people as possible. In a small boat, only oneself can board, while in a large boat, many people can be aboard. This is where the words small boat and big boat come from. To put it a little more simply, a lesser vehicle is the level of a student, and a greater vehicle is the level of a spiritual teacher. In Buddhism, a person who can teach and guide people to Buddhism is called a bodhisattva. The most obvious way to distinguish between a person of the lesser vehicle and a person of the greater vehicle is by understanding that anyone who rejects the idea of these different levels is a lesser vehicle. Since time immemorial, it has been said that there are four main levels of the ladder to enlightenment. Later teachings of Buddha are also in line with this ancient traditional doctrine. Shakyamuni Buddha himself said in the Buddhist scriptures, "My teaching is not one iota different from that transmitted by the ancient Buddhas." This can be clearly seen when we apply Buddha's own life to these four levels of the Tathagata ladder. The first stage was when Siddhartha became aware of the impermanence of the world at the age of 12, deeply sought the true self within, and began to meditate in order to reach the realization of true self-consciousness. And from this time onwards, according to Shuddhadana's ideas, Siddhartha began to be taught yoga and scriptures by the Indian Gurujis of the time, such as Brahmins and Shamanas. When did Siddhartha, under the guidance of these gurus, reach the second stage of samatha vipassana through meditation? A close reading of the Buddhist scriptures reveals that after leaving the castle at the age of 29 and taking ordination, he first became a disciple of two of the most eminent gurus of Magadha at the time, Alara Kalama and Udraka Brahmaputra. They were recognized as having reached a profound state of Zen or Samatha Vipassana in accordance with the traditional meditation methods of the time, and taught many disciples. At the age of 29, Siddhartha was apprenticed to these two saints for a time, but he soon learned their techniques so easily that he left again, saying that he had no more to learn from them. In other words, Siddhartha had already mastered the art of Samatha Vipassana under the guidance of his spiritual teachers in the court. These episodes show that Siddhartha had already reached the third level of enlightenment at the time of his ordination, and this was indeed God-conscious enlightenment. Alara and Udraka were mere meditators, neither Buddhas nor messiahs. When they independently reached Samatha Vipassana, they both mistakenly thought it was the final stage of enlightenment and were content with the state of the lesser vehicle. However, due to his natural destiny, Siddhartha was already aware at this time that there was a divine realization above and beyond this. Soon after, he left the two meditators and set off on a further journey.